Hello, everyone. My name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about The Negro Speaks of Rivers, written by Langston Hughes. Now, before I read this poem, go into the meaning and explanation, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. There you go. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, so I'm going to read this poem. And after I'm done reading it, we will talk about the meaning and explanation behind it. All right, so it's on my laptop right here, and now I'm going to read it. The Negro Speaks of Rivers, by Langston Hughes, of course. I've known rivers. I've known rivers as ancient as the world, and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. So that's the poem by Langston Hughes. The way I read it was to have some power, some gusto behind it, because this is a very significant poem, a very powerful poem. Langston Hughes lived in America that was not like the America I live in. We're in the 21st century. It's 2021, and the America that we live in, where African Americans have rights, women have rights. There's women's suffrage. Women, men of all kinds can vote. There's everyone is we're trying to have an equal society, not discriminating against any race, any kind of individuals, any kind of people. This is America that we have. The America that we have today would be heaven to anybody in the 1800s, because the world has, America has advanced so much for Black people, women of any kind, because the 19th century was not that pleasant. The 19th century was not that pleasant for women at all. It was not only until the latter part of the 20th century where white women start to, have some comfort or have, equality or some rights within the United States, because, it just wasn't pretty. Times weren't pretty. And this poem focuses on Black people. It focuses on what they went through, not just in America, not during the time of slavery in America, but throughout the world, throughout time, basically. This is a very powerful poem, and Langston Hughes is talking about rivers here. He mentions a lot of rivers. That's something to think about and to take note of if you're reading this poem yourself. He talks about the Euphrates, the Mississippi, the Nile. He goes into, he mentions the Congo. He's talking about all types of different rivers, and he's saying that the Black race, Black people, in terms of the meaning of the poem, he's talking about how the Black people have witnessed with history, how Black people have always been a part of history, how they built Egypt, built the pyramids. Now, to some scholars, this is wrong, because for most scholars, they don't view ancient Egypt as a Black or white civilization. Movies will tell you otherwise, because whenever there's a movie that's featuring Egypt, usually it's white people representing Egyptians, and that's the case with a lot of movies. Displaying or depicting a lot of different races and different cultures. But the thing is, Langston Hughes is saying here that, Black people, brown people, they've existed for hundreds of years. They've been here and old as rivers. They've witnessed history. They've been a part of history, and they weren't just bystanders. They built history. They assisted. They were a part of history. And the reason why this is significant is because there was a time in America, especially during the age of slavery, where black people were told that they had no value. I mean, there was a time in America where black people had the same value as cattle. Their slave masters would buy them and sell them and kill them and abuse them as they would an animal. And there was no difference. The rights didn't exist for black people. Rights didn't exist for any of them at all. They were property. They were something that could be getting rid of. Slave masters could get rid of them at any point in time. And so, Langston Hughes, he lived in America where racism existed. He lived in America where he didn't have the civil rights that black people have today, or he didn't have the freedoms that black people have today. And he's saying here that even though that certain scholars don't believe that there haven't been any significant African or black nations, even though that they don't believe in it, even though they've taught us not to value ourselves and value who we are and our heritage, we do have a heritage. It's not like we haven't been around. We've existed. And there's a significant proof of that. There have been several ancient African kingdoms. The Europeans didn't value them. The Europeans always viewed black people, Africans, as savages, as brutes, as things that always needed education. They never looked to see that Africans had their own civilizations. They had their own forms of kings and queens and governments. They had their own, sorts of currency and the way that they live. And, that's one way to look to see it's the signs of a civilization. When a civilization has a king and queen, has a natural leader, has ways to get food or to hunt and establish systems that people live into. As long as a civilization has that, you can see that there is some planning there. There is some human organization to build a civilization. And when you look at African history, you look at Africa in terms of its history, you see a lot of kingdoms where black people are the leaders of those kingdoms. It's just that history doesn't focus on that. History is written by the winners, and the empires of the past. They're the ones that wrote history. They're the ones that shaped it to how they like it. And so Langston Hughes is reminding us that black people weren't just savages in Africa. They are human beings. They have created great things. They have created great civilizations. He says that he talks about blood. So that line where he mentions blood in human veins, how it's older than blood in human veins. There's this feeling, this emotion within this poem of flow, right? If you think about rivers, you think about lakes, there's always this flow. So throughout the generations, the same way that a river keeps flowing and flowing and flowing, you can think about black people the same way, because throughout the generations, the blood of black people have been moving the same way as other races. If you think, okay, so for black people, if you think about lineage and generations, right, it's the same bloodline going from generation to generation to generation. The same way when you think about a river, a river flows for years, decades, centuries, millennia, and it never stopped. The Nile River still exists. The Congo River still exists. The Mississippi River still exists, and they keep flowing. They keep turning, and black people have existed too. I'm not saying that black people are as old as the universe, and Langston Hughes is not saying that, but he's saying that they've been around. They're not new. They've created great things, and they've been a part of history. Now, even though that certain nations and certain countries have forced some black people to forget about their value and who they are, the fact of the matter is that they exist, and they've been here. Now, there's so much to this poem. Langston Hughes even talks about Abraham Lincoln. Now, we know that Abraham Lincoln, went down the Mississippi River, and he saw the slave trade. He saw how slaves were being treated, and it was horrific. And later, Abraham Lincoln, we know that he became president, and he was behind the Emancipation Proclamation. So that's another significant part of this poem. It goes all the way back to ancient history and all the way to Abraham Lincoln, and show you how far black people have come, how far they've persevered. And in many ways, you see the rivers come to life, because Langston Hughes talks about how the rivers are singing. He talks about how his soul has grown deep like the rivers. The same way, and the things like when I'm reading this, I kind of get this emotion, this feeling, this sense that black people can be compared to rivers, in the sense that a lot of rivers don't give up. Rivers don't just roll over and stop moving. Rivers like the Nile, like the Mississippi, great rivers, they keep flowing and keep moving and keep pushing. There's this persistence. There's this idea of not giving up. There's this idea of never backing down. And even though and that's very powerful, because when you think about black history in America and what black people had to go through, and you think about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and black leaders and civil rights and right to vote, equality. So it's this persistence, this intensity to not give up, to keep pushing, to keep flowing, and to always exist, to the point where we're in 2020, we're in 2021 now, and black people all over the world have rights, are citizens of the countries that they are a part of. They've lost a lot in the same way, and they've changed a lot in the same way, because the river never stays the same, but it always keeps on moving. So it's a very significant poem, very powerful poem. Langston Hughes, there's a lot of soul in here, there's a lot of power in here, and there's a lot of history in here. He mentions blood, he mentions the different rivers. He mentions the different history and the significance of black people, witnessing history, but not only witnessing history, but participating in it and being a part of it. And those are the deep meanings of this poem and what it's talking about, and what Langston Hughes is trying to say within this poem. Because Langston Hughes, one thing that I found while researching this poem is that he saw the Mississippi River, he saw the natural world, or he went out into nature, and he looked at the Mississippi River, and he looked at rivers all over the world, and those are very significant. They tell a story, and for me, from my own personal perspective, and this is a deeper meaning for me, is that if you read the Bible, you know that the Bible has a lot of different scriptures where it says that in the end times, or when God wants them to, that the rivers and lakes and great oceans of the world will spit out everything that they've swallowed. So all of the souls, all of the treasures, all of the things that the seas and rivers have swallowed, according to Christian beliefs, there is one day where all of that will be spit out. So it's kind of like within the Bible, there's this idea that the rivers have witnessed everything, that the rivers have been there. And when you think about the Mississippi River and you think about the oceans around the world, think about how many Africans died at sea when they were captured from their homelands and brought to America. Think about how many Africans and black people who died in the Mississippi River when it came to slave trades, and their masters selling them for money. Think about how they were beaten. Think about how they were killed. And it's kind of like the river has noticed all of this. And Langston Hughes even says that he hears the Mississippi River singing. So the river kind of becomes alive in a way, saying that, I've witnessed this. They've been here. They've, persisted, and they've fought for everything that they have. So, very significant, very powerful, a lot of imagery, a lot of diction, and word choice that's used in here to kind of like give you a picture of who black people are and what they've done in the world. So that's everything I have to say about this poem. That's my view on it. Try to read it yourself and see what you can get from it. And yeah, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment, and I'll see you guys in my next video.